anytime and anywhere. Hey, it's free.
You are watching the multi-awarded Radio Bandido TV on channel 224 Sky Cable and TV Plus boxes. Simulcast on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Informing, advising, and entertaining the Filipinos and OFWs around the world. Streaming live on www.facebook.com/DZRJ 8:10 a.m. or on YouTube, channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam here on DZRJ and Radio Bandito TV. My name is Lecain, and here on the show we talk about interesting stories going on around the world. But today we have a special guest because 𝗪cie is here. Now, a lot of you that may have been watching the show over the last couple of years know that Vaughn has been on the show several times before. In fact, he was almost a regular on the show before, and we really enjoy having Vaughn come on because of his expertise and because Vaughn actually is an attorney, which makes him much smarter than me. And also, Vaughn has been working he's a Filipino, has been working as an attorney in the United States.
That is correct.
And what state do you work in?
I'm basically licensed or admitted to Wisconsin bar, but I can also practice in federal courts. So essentially anywhere in the states that has federal cases I can do.
Okay.
I'm admitted into Wisconsin bar.
And I do not want to jump the gun, but there's a lot of stuff going on in Wisconsin right now. I know you guys had an interesting election there. Of course, a lot of people in the Philippines probably might not be interested in that election, but you did have an election recently for the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
Which involved our good friend on the show here, Elon Musk, who we tend to talk about quite a bit here on the show, because he spent a lot of money, maybe about $25 million, to try and get a certain judge elected in there in Wisconsin, and he lost.
Lost a lot, yeah.
And we don't want to make fun of Elon Musk, but right now we're kind of making fun of Elon Musk because he spent all that money in Wisconsin.
It's okay to make fun of billionaires once in a while.
Yeah, because he made all that. And a lot of people have come out recently and talked a lot about Elon. Mm-hmm. I'm bringing up the thing in Wisconsin because that was really big. The fact that he spent all that money trying to get that judge elected and then he lost. And a lot of it might have to do with him, not so much the judge, but with the fact that he was trying to get the judge elected. And right now in the United States, a lot of people don't like Elon Musk. He's been doing some harsh things. In fact, just the other day, on Saturday, they had one of the biggest protests across the entire United States against Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In all 50 states, from what I understand, they were protesting Donald Trump and Elon Musk in something called Hands Off America. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to, this was such great news because it just happened. And I wasn't even really going to talk about it that much. And then I saw it on TV and I'm like, oh my goodness, what does that remind anybody in the Philippines of? I mean, it showed just places that were just, a sea of people And supposedly, from what I understand, they had 1,400 separate protests happening across America and other parts of the world, even London and Paris. And they were having them there at state capitals and federal buildings, congressional office, Social Security headquarters, city halls. And the reason they had this protest, from what I understand, is they're trying to stop the billionaire power grab and attacks on democracy and slashing jobs, invasion of privacy, assault on our services, immigration. There's something for everybody. If there's something you want to protest, Donald Trump and Elon Musk have done it, and now they need to be protested. So, coming from Wisconsin, in the United States just recently, what is it like being? Because you're a Filipino, and you're on a work visa. What is your visa?
Basically, I was in a ambassador's visa and a student visa when I was living in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah. Do you ever see all these things that are going on in the United States and think, oh my goodness, this is kind of scary, or is it everything just fine?
I think for especially for the millennial perspective, it's very exciting. When Trump initially won the election the first time in 2016, I was part of the Women's March in Honolulu. I was still living in Hawaii at that time, so that was an exciting part. But
did you wear the ears, the pink ears that everybody had?
No, I think it was too hot at that time. Actually, maybe it rained a little from what I remember. Mm-hmm. But it's such an exciting time. But that's a state in Hawaii. A state like Hawaii was traditionally democratic. Mm-hmm. But when I moved to Wisconsin, where it's a purple state, when it's red and blue, we have a Democratic and a Republican senator.
Yeah.
It's very rare to see that. But in cities like Madison and Milwaukee, it's very much more common. But the recent protests that happened maybe 2 days ago now, it is very surprising to me, having lived there for the last 5 years myself. It takes a lot for locals, especially in Wisconsin, to move out there, get out there and protest. So to see that amount of number of protesters, especially in Washington Street, literally blocks after blocks after blocks of people filled out, it's super surprising to me. I've never seen a Wisconsin crowd that much, in a political gathering.
Have you ever thought, being a foreigner in the United States, if I go out and protest, maybe somebody will see me and I'll have some trouble. I'll have some trouble lately. We'll talk about that a little bit, about the immigration problems that some people are having in the United States.
Right.
But I know that, the interesting thing is, in getting back to these protests, and then we'll talk a little bit about immigration. Mm-hmm. I knew that they were going to have a protest because they said it on the television. Oh, there's a protest plan for, okay, there's going to be like a little protest there in Washington. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that it was going to be like millions of people. And the organizer said they have these 3 demands, and the demands I think are great, to end the billionaire takeover and rampant corruption of the Trump administration, to end the slashing of federal funds for Medicaid, Social Security, and other programs working people rely on, and to end the attacks on immigrants, trans people, and other communities of the like. So that's their demands. Right. And I guarantee you that Donald Trump is not going to give in to their demands. But it is fascinating to me that, he just came into office in January, and this is where we are. Now, we're going to get to a bunch of things today. We're actually going to probably talk about the United States most of the show because Attorney Vaughn is here, who's a Filipino living in the United States and working there. So it gives you an extra added insight as to what's happening there. But as far as these demands that they have now, I wonder if that's going to make a big difference.
I personally think I want to be as optimistic as a lot of these protesters are, but I think it's not going to be easy. It's going to be an even harder fight for them, considering what has transpired in Trump's first administration. I think it's a long road. I personally don't see a lot of major success in the future regarding these demands. But given the turnout that happened with these protests, I feel like it will awaken a lot of the smaller communities that has been, timid this past elections. I think now they're understanding the gravity of of their participation. Again, these voter turnouts, and that happened in Wisconsin, which Trump won last election, they swayed almost blue, like entire counties shifted blue. I'm not sure if anybody has seen the graphics for that, but a lot of them, this huge voter turnout for younger voters, and the demographic that traditionally that won Trump in his last election also shifted blue. So this is certainly promising, but again, it will still take a lot of grassroots efforts to really get those demands, or even put it on the table for discussion for a Republican-controlled White House and Senate.
Because Trump, he won the election, not by a lot, but he won. He won by some. And now, a lot of those people that voted for him are looking at the country now, even immigrants that voted for him are looking at the country now going, oh my God, what did we do? Was this a good idea? And I think that might be a lot of what is going to have to happen, is all those people that voted for Trump that are now going, oh my goodness, was that the right idea? They're starting to have, I think, it's going to take a lot for them to have to sway to the other side. But right now, I think a lot of people, from what and I watched a lot of these protests, and I watched a lot of the interviews of the people who voted for Trump. And they're like, we just didn't think that he was going to do stuff like this. And rolling into the 64th day. But it's interesting, when you're watching this, like on television, you watch, hey ho, Trump's got to go, all these things, these chantings that they're doing, and Jamie Raskin, I know in the Philippines a lot of people don't know who Jamie Raskin is. He's one of these congressmen who's leading the fight against Donald Trump, and he had some interesting things to say, that the co-founders of that wrote a constitution does not begin with "we the dictators," it begins with "we the people." So there, it's kind of things that are coming out now, and even I like that woman, Ilhan Omar,
yes.
The Minnesota woman. She is a immigrant who came to the United States and now is a congressman. She is what we strive for in America, is to, we're the land of the free and opportunity, and you have an immigrant, a refugee that comes to the United States and becomes a congressman. And of course, she's been attacked left and right by the Trump administration. She said just the other day, if you want a country that still believes in due process, we have to fight for it. If you believe in a country where we take care of our neighbors, look after the poor, and make sure our children have a future they believe in, we have to fight for it. So this is what the Democrats are trying to persuade people to jump ship and come to their side right now, because I think that's the only way it's going to happen. There are going to be people in the United States that are never, it doesn't matter what Trump does. Like I said, he could, shoot somebody in the back of the head in the middle of Fifth Avenue. But there's all these people that are now teetering. And then here again, we have Elon Musk, who, in a lot of people's eyes is even worse than Donald Trump. In fact, I think Donald Trump hides behind him sometimes.
Right.
It's like, oh, you think I'm bad? Look at my buddy Elon Musk. And with his Department of Government Efficiency, and a lot of people are right now going, hey, wait a minute, we got you to come in and clean up the government, but now you're firing us. And I think that's a lot of what these protests are starting to be about. So I know one of the things that I find fascinating is that people now, especially in the United States and even in the Philippines, are really paying attention to the news. Mm-hmm. And because when they were doing some of these interviews especially about Elon Musk, and the fact that he keeps making mistakes. He keeps, we just saved you $6 billion, and then it turns out it wasn't $6 billion, it was $6 million. And that whole thing about the $110 billion, and then it turns out, it was actually $55 billion, which seems like, it's just a little bit lower, but it's $55 billion, which is actually a lot.
He said so many numbers this past month that I lost track of how much U.S. has saved.
Allegedly.
I cannot keep track.
And then they say, well, we saved you money, with this thing that we did. And then the reporter's like, well, wait a minute, that Joe Biden is the one that did that 3 years ago. How are you claiming that, it's that kind of thing? And I think the fact that a lot of people, and this whole thing about 9 million people who are over 130 years old are getting Social Security. And believe me, he didn't think that the media was going to look it up. And I think a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute. So you're saying that you're going to take away Social Security because you're saying our Social Security, because you're saying that all these people that are already dead are collecting Social Security? Show us the proof. And of course, they don't have the proof. They're just making it up. And so a lot of people are now saying, hey, okay, the stuff you're doing with immigrants, the stuff you're doing with gay people and the gay rights and all this kind of thing, we can deal with that. But if you start messing with our Social Security, I think that's where people start to draw the line.
Exactly. And then it certainly is a point of awakening for a lot of Americans, I believe. But going back to what you said about how Philippines is starting to be aware and I guess involved too with U.S. news, I think it goes to show how information travels so much faster right now. And with the optics of Trump administration, they're mirroring it to the way government here is done in the Philippines. It's also going to be a lot of talking points and certainly a lot of reflection that will be happening in the coming election for the Philippines as well. Wherein there seems to be, even the Philippines is like a multi-party system. There seems to be this I guess, bisectional view of politics, where one favor the other. One's a good party, one's the other. So it's going to be interesting to see how, I guess, Philippines and the Philippine public will try to absorb what America went through in the last election into the upcoming election that they have.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so much going into this upcoming election, and I don't want to get too much into that election because we have so many great shows here on DZRJ that do really look and do a lot of analysis on the upcoming election in the Philippines. But I think, people don't know it yet, but what is happening in the United States, it's so far away, yet very soon I think it's going to be a lot closer as the next few months go by. And the fact that, the Philippines is, what do they say? The Philippines is #1 in using Facebook. Social media category, something like that. They're #1 in something. But there's so many stories that are starting to come out now. There was this story about Louis Lynn Dixon, and I don't know if you ever heard of her. I just read this story just recently about this 64-year-old Filipino. And she has been living in the United States for the last 50 years, as is a lot of Filipinos. I mean, the United States has a huge Filipino population. She was working there as a lab technician. She had a green card, and she went to the Philippines last year in February, if I understand the story right. And when she was on the airplane flying back from the Philippines to the United States, she ordered or got a ham sandwich on the plane. And if you know Filipinos, what she did with that ham sandwich was she put it in her purse to save it for later, because we all know Philippines, they love to save food and eat for later. Anyway, so she walked through, immigration, and of course they caught the sandwich, and they took her in and questioned her and let her go. So this just recently, she flew to the Philippines for a visit, and on her way back with her niece, she got stopped again because of that flag that she had before. And this time it was not so easy for her. She went in, they did the thing where they took her in the room for the questioning, and they told her niece to just go home. And then her niece finally called back and trying to figure out what happened, and they arrested her aunt and put her in detention, and are holding her aunt for a hearing to see if she should be allowed to stay in the United States anymore. Like I said, she's been in the United States for 50 years working as a lab technician. And the fact that now she's sitting in a detention center, and from what I understand, her hearing is in July. So this woman is 64 years old, and first thing, she was just on a plane ride from the Philippines, which if you've ever been on one of those plane rides, it is brutal. And she gets off the plane, and now she's stuck in a detention center, this older lady. And I think this is what, I think is going to make, as we get in the next more, getting deeper into this administration, things like this that are going to really affect the Philippine and the Filipinos living in the United States.
Yeah, it's certainly scary, and given as a lawyer, I know how difficult and confusing it is in immigration courts, especially when you try to, fight your case or present your case in front of an immigration judge. Because unlike criminal courts, a lot of the rulings are not really released in public. So you only based on public precedents or what you can read or hear from the existing cases. So this may be a challenging case, but certainly I believe a lot of nonprofit organizations and immigration rights groups are certainly looking into this case and how will it affect everyone, because this is a case about green card, and there are millions of green card holders in the US. So if this set a precedent that is not favorable to the green card holders, it is going to be a scary next 4 years into the Trump administration.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Trump administration originally said, listen, we're going to really crack down on criminals. There's rapists and murderers in this country, and they're coming from all over. They're coming here to destroy your way of life, and they're sneaking over just running across the border because the Biden administration had open borders, and we're going to get them all, and we're going to send them back to where they came from. And what has happened is he's going after people that are speaking out against his administration. It's been, we've been talking about it here on the show about this one guy that got basically snatched from his house. They came in and checked. He was not just a green card holder. He was married to a U.S. citizen, about to have a baby. I think she was eight months pregnant, and then they just came in and grabbed him. And they do this thing where they take you and they don't give any information out or anything, and then they take you to Louisiana, which they were from New Jersey. And if you know the United States, it's like going from Manila down to the southern part of Mindanao. It's very far away, and Louisiana is a very conservative Republican place, and they put you in a detention center there. And this girl the other week, this woman who was a Fulbright scholar or something like that, and they just snatched her right off the sidewalk. And I look at these things that they are, before, if you were a foreigner and you did something, you had a chance to go to court, try and prove your innocence. Now, even if you don't do anything, and you're legally in the country, or you're a certified, a U.S. resident in the country, you can be snatched and deported without any trial. And I think that is a big problem. This one fella who was Venezuelan, and I know they've been going after the people of Venezuela, and they snatched him and they took him, and he got sent to an Ecuadorian prison. One of the worst prisons in the world. They shaved his head and put him in this thing, and his family didn't even know where he was. And then there was a picture that showed up on TV, and they saw him in the picture in the prison. And then the Trump administration came and they said, all right, well, yeah, we made a mistake. We weren't supposed to take him. He just got caught up in it. Sorry. Okay, well, get him and bring him back. Oh no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. He's already, in Ecuador. We can't get him back now. Really? I find a lot of these things where my eyes just open wide, and I'm going, wait a minute, what country is this we're talking about? This is the United States. I find that interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also very scary, especially for a non-immigrant or like a non-immigrant visa holder to the U.S. You have so little rights going into their country, and you see what's happening to these communities who are transitioning into full citizenship. What could happen to them?
Yeah.
And I think these incidences are unfortunately not isolated. This happens a lot, and maybe not a lot of them are publicized, as the Venezuelan guy and as Llewellyn Dixon, or is that her last name? case is. But again, this is part of it. Maybe actually is like Trump really pushing back on a lot of these initiatives against him, and really sending a message that these people are not welcome. And maybe this is just for theatrics and this is just for show, but it is certainly pushing some legal ideologies to its limit. Green card holders basically, we all know they're not entitled to full citizenship, but at what point are they protected? What their rights are
I mean, I thought before they were kind of protected. I mean, this woman from the Philippines, as it turns out, she had the reason that they wanted to deport her is she had some kind of criminal case against her, some nonviolent case against her 24 years ago. It's the same thing with that woman who was, one of 3 people that wrote an op-ed about the issues that are going on in Gaza. And I mean, there are issues going on in Gaza, and the fact that she wrote about that, which had, we're in the United States, or they were in the United States, didn't have anything to do, they're not, Israeli, and that the fact that the government would say, well, because you wrote that, we're going to deport you. And I find that interesting. And, people think about the fact that what this does to immigrants, but what we don't look at is what this might do to U.S. citizens. And this is something that correlates with the Filipino thing, because I know President Marcos came out recently and said, if you're in the United States and you're there illegally, just come on back. We'll just come on back. But I was reading this story the other day, and it really took me back about a 16-year-old girl whose name is Josephine. And Josephine has a debilitating genetic condition. Like when she's in pain, she bites the air. It's a severe autism thing with obsessive compulsive disorder, a hyperactivity disorder, among all these different conditions that she has. And she's going to have this for the rest of her life. I mean, this is what her thing. She has very loving parents. However, her parents are not equipped to be able to handle this kind of condition. But the parents don't want to put her in a home because, that's just the worst thing you can do with it. You should stay, in my opinion. But they, do everything you can because I'm sure she wants to be at home. So they hired this woman to help take care of her. And that woman's been taking care of her for quite a few years now. And that girl has become to rely on this woman. This woman has figured out the things that trigger her, autism and stuff. And she's, quite good at all this kind of thing. However, this woman is from Venezuela. And there is a chance now that the Trump administration has now, they had Venezuelan people, actually Venezuela and Haitians and Cubans, they were on this program that protected them. And as of this week, April 7th, the Trump administration has ended that program. So she is no longer protected in the United States, so she could actually be deported at any time. And the parents are they just don't know what to do. If she were to leave now, what that would do to their family. And I look at the Filipinos and the amount of them that are home caregivers and what that could mean, especially I personally, I know some Filipino home caregivers that have been working in the United States for 30 years and they are not legal. But, their work is indispensable. And, as are many foreigners that might not have all their papers in order, that are either working in the farms or working as caregivers and things like that. And now there's a chance that a lot of those people are very worried and very scared about being scooped up and put in a detention center and sent back to their country.
Yeah, certainly. Again, this is a scary time. And I think this is where foreign policy with the Philippines plays in its foreign affairs. So when Trump basically flagged or signaled that he is doing some mass deportations for undocumented people, the DFA or the Filipino embassy in the USA sent out advisory telling people, hey, find legal options right now or leave the country. So establishing really good relationships for these consulates and embassies in the US to be in most of the way be cooperative with the U.S. government will really favor or be beneficial for these communities who are in the I guess seesaw part of being deported or not, because if you can kind of observe, a lot of the communities or nationalities that Trump is targeting are from the nationalities or whose leaders are critical of him, say Mexico. So if Philippines try to be cooperative as much as possible within the legal capacities and the tools that the embassies and consulates can use, I think Trump would sort of dial back on targeting Filipino communities. But that doesn't mean that he won't if they do that. I mean, he still has all the power to command a lot of agencies to enact whatever he wants. But I guess one of the ways that the Philippine government can protect these communities, because now that we know he can target not just the undocumented but also the green card holders. Perhaps it's time to revisit
the legal residents.
Yeah.
Which is, it's funny. It's almost like if you, and I would say this the funny way, if you kiss Donald Trump's butt, he will be okay with you. And that's just like what the main story that we're getting to today, which is the tariffs.
Oh my gosh.
And that is clearly the number one story in the world right now, which we've been slowly moving up to get into this. It's a tough subject to explain. But just like with the immigration thing, I think a lot of it is if you say nice things about Trump, you may not get tariffed. But if you don't say nice things, you may get a lot of tariffs. This has literally encapsulated the entire week of news. And some are calling it the American Brexit, which I don't think that correlates very well, but I understand where the people are coming from, because it's this crazy bomb that has just hit the world economy. And it all centered around something called Liberation Day. And Liberation Day was the day that U.S. President Trump, he came out and he announced the tariffs. And a lot of people are like, yeah, so what? Because he didn't just 2 weeks ago, he announced the tariffs, then maybe 3 weeks ago, he announced tariffs before that, and then he does the tariffs, and then he doesn't do it, and he does the tariffs and doesn't do it. But this was the big one. And I think this is the one, before he was going after Canada and Mexico, which, by the way, I never made sense of that one. The Canada Mexico, he was going to tariff Canada because they wouldn't stop the influx of fentanyl in the United States, whereas there's almost no fentanyl coming in from Canada. So it couldn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me then, but it's starting to make sense to me now.
Okay.
Because I think that his idea was not so much to put tariff taxes on Canada and Mexico, but to put tariff taxes on the world. And that was sort of his lead-in. Like, okay, here's what's coming. And so now that he has basically, he came out with like a little chart, which nobody could read because it was too small. And he said, here's how we're going to go off and we're going to tariff all of these countries. And it was basically almost every country except, of course, Russia. Mm-hmm. Russia wasn't on there for whatever reason. But anyway, Philippines.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. But then the brighter side, I guess, it has certainly educated a lot of people on how trade and international policies work.
I was like, what is going to be the bright side of this, Vaughn? And that is the bright side. We now know what a tariff is.
Yes.
We didn't really know before.
And how to spell it correctly.
I still don't know how to spell it correctly.
And on top of that, there's also a lot of memes, kind of going around. But also, I think what I learned from this one is it really is shining a light on how powerful really the West is. You have the G7, and then their relationships, how these negotiations and their local politics affect the world. And it kind of makes me think about how regional organizations such like ASEAN, where Philippines belongs to, how those organizations will play in the coming decades or so, because these effects are not short-term. There's going to be long-term decades effect. So it made me think about, if we rely on these trades that are from G7, who's really messing up everything for everyone else, we have to rely to our closer neighbors and see how we can counter the bad effects of these of tariffs, and we start to see that, maybe not in ASEAN wise, but we've seen China, Korea, and Japan traditionally, who hate each other, trying to come together and organize.
This is what I think is going to happen. I mean, me personally, this is what I think is going to happen because, a lot of people, especially I've spoken to here in the Philippines about this, and they don't quite have a grasp of what it really means yet, and if you actually look at the formula, and I looked at this formula that they came up with, the Trump administration, and everybody has come out and said, this formula makes no sense. I mean, these are the best economists. And when I sat down and really studied it, sure enough, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Right.
Like, what, it's the idea that, for instance, let's take any country. I think Vietnam has been coming up a lot lately.
They're getting
Bangladesh.
47%.
Yeah, they're trying.
Highest.
The huge things. But why is that? Why are they having? Why is Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries in the world, getting tariffed so badly? And it's part of the reason is the way that they've thought this through. Which is why so many, and it's not just me, I have not heard a major economist say that this was a good idea. Not one single one yet. Because what is happening is, like a country like Bangladesh, they sell a lot of stuff to the United States because they make stuff really cheaply.
Right. Most of their products are fabric.
Yeah, fabrics, clothes and things like that. And so, they sell a lot of stuff to the United States, but they don't really buy a lot of stuff from the United States. So they are looking at the difference, that space between what they sell to the United States and what they buy from the United States. Now, the United States is different than any country in the world in that we buy a lot of crap in the United States. We are the biggest crap buyers in the world. We will buy anything off of Amazon. People buy, every day they have Amazon boxes coming in, and it's like just anything, coffee mugs, personalized coffee mugs. Nobody in Bangladesh is going to buy a personalized coffee mug, but in the United States, half the population has that kind of thing. So I think that's where they're getting these insane numbers from, that think, well, we're going to have to change. There's no way. So what's going to happen now? Well, okay, Bangladesh is like, we can't do this. We can't pay these tariffs like this. Why don't we just sell it to these people instead, or sell it to those people? And it's the same way with things like coffee. We can't make coffee in the United States, so we buy it from Brazil. But Brazil doesn't buy that much stuff that anywhere near equal to stuff that. So right now it's like, well, China's like, well, why don't you just sell your coffee to us? And I think this is where they're not looking ahead, because they believe that, well, we'll just do it ourselves. The United States is like, we'll start doing. We'll bring jobs to here. We'll build our own factories. We'll do our own stuff. We'll make our own crap to give to Amazon to sell to our public. But who's going to do that? Who's that? Nike? Is Nike going to do that? Is Nike going to start? Is they going to move their plants from China and Thailand to the United States, where they're going to have to pay people $20 an hour? I don't think so. I think they're going to wait around to see if Donald Trump gets.
I think, labor-wise and industry-wise, I don't think U.S. has the capacity to shift production or manufacturing back, or really source them differently at this time. But I think one of the first industries, I guess, or fields that will be affected is the retail industry. You mentioned Bangladesh, Vietnam, clothing companies like Gap. You really source their products from Southeast Asia and South Asia. So we are going to start seeing the effects of that maybe in 2 seasons from now, come winter, when these, I guess, fast fashion articles are being released from them. Also, retail industries like recently GameStop, the GameStop CEO has announced that, the release of Switch 2, which is like a very popular game console across the world, and maybe half of their market is in the US. Now it's being delayed for months. And I saw this very funny meme online, the Trump administration has angered the nerds and the K-pop fans, and, they will take care of Trump from now on. So I guess that is just the initial, or the first industries in the U.S. that will really I guess we'll see how it affects, because those are the ones that are really directly affecting consumers.
Yeah.
The retail industry. So we'll see how that transpires in the coming months.
I mean, in case you've been, like under a tree trunk out in the middle of the woods for the last week, you might have noticed that the stock market took an extreme swan dive off of a cliff. I mean, they were, for somebody like me who follows the stock market every day, because I'm like, I'm a resident here of the Philippines, but I'm still an American citizen. So we still have my retirement, everything all tied up in the United States. And so I follow that. And so I remember back in 2008, where we had the extreme issues in the market. And then during COVID, we had an extreme drop in the market. And the only other time we have had extreme, huge, massive drops like those times in my lifetime was this week, where we watched the Dow drop 2,200 points in one day, and then 1,600 points in the day before. And I mean, you're just sitting there, and there's nothing you can do. You can't sell because it's too late.
Right.
Because a lot of people they didn't think this would happen. They didn't think that he would actually do it. We thought he was just doing it as leverage, to try and get people to bend the knee, especially some of these smaller countries, Asian countries especially, to see if he can get them to bend the knee to the United States and do exactly what the United States wants and this kind of thing, make special trade deals. But he didn't do that. He went ahead and made tariffs across the board. He made tariffs into countries with no people. No people live in it. There's two countries. One has penguins, and the other one has something else, and they have tariffs. They got a 10% tariff up there, and there's no people living there, which means that that when they're making these policies, a lot of people are not really following exactly what's going on. They're sticking into GPT and saying, okay, give us some countries to make tariffs, but I think that this week, this is where a lot of people in the United States, especially in the business world, in the industrial world, took a step back and said, okay, wait a minute. I thought we were going to make a deal. This was just like, we were kind of going to do this thing so we could get a little bit of pricing or whatever. But now, like the car companies and so forth, they're all, everybody's stock across the board. Apple, Walmart, like I said, Nike, these big companies, just like losing money left and right. What did they say? That $7 trillion in wealth disappeared this week. And that's just a number I can't even conceive of. $7 trillion just disappeared this week. And part of that $7 trillion was mine. Because I watch mine just really, and I'm very, conservative in my investments. But I think that is something that scared a lot of people, because a lot of the markets from around the world took a dive. And the reason that they took a dive was because of this thing that everybody keeps saying is the stupidest idea ever. And I keep wondering about the people that are, and you can comment on this one, the people that are in the White House. Mm-hmm. Because I think, if you're in the White House and Donald Trump says, what, I want to do this tariff. And they go, well, Mr. Trump, that's not a really good idea. Okay, you're out. Next guy, come in. Okay, what do you say? Oh, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do the tariffs. Because that guy, and I can't remember his name, that guy that's on the TV all the time talking now from the Trump administration, that he knows that this is wrong. Because never in his entire life has he ever said anything like about tariffs, where Trump has talked about it his whole life. I remember back on the Oprah Winfrey show, like 20 years ago, he was talking about tariffs. And this is how we were going to control the world. And I think maybe back in the 70s, this might have worked. Although it didn't work in the 30s when they tried it before. It didn't work. In fact, it caused huge problems in the United States back then. But I think now it's like, okay, we're going to throw these tariffs and we're going to get every country to bend the knee to the United States. And the other countries are like, no, you're not. We're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to tariff you. Mm-hmm. And I think he thinks that he's going to be able to get them to make a deal with him. And some people are like, all right, we're just not going to deal with the United States anymore. We'll just deal with each other. And I don't know. I don't know if you think that might be jumping the gun a little bit because it just started.
I think it does a little bit. I mean, if you look historically at the way in certain historical events wherein the Dow Jones dropped significantly, I think famously, I would, if I remember correctly, it would be 9/11 and then the COVID-19 pandemic. But those events that triggered, that drastic drop are, I guess, not political or non-economical things.
They're not. They were caused by a problem. They were caused by the COVID drop was caused by COVID, by the supply chains and whatever. This was caused on policy.
On purpose.
On purpose. Yeah. I mean, and it's not like they didn't know, because every, program from MSNBC to CNN to even Fox said, you know what, this is going to cause a lot of problems if this really happens. And then he did it. And then this week we saw the massive sell-off in the stock market. Not the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq, but in the Japanese markets, in the Chinese markets, in the European markets, they're all like, it's mad because everybody's like very nervous because we don't know what's going to come next.
Right, and then it certainly is going to threaten the dollar, the dominance of the dollar. I mean, dollar was still probably the dominant currency in the world for decades to come. But if you're a historian in the future and you look back into this event, a lot of them would probably point, this is probably one of the major tipping points in the death of the dollar. But then it's such a sensitive time right now because you have other organizations like, the BRICS trying to start their own
the BRICS.
Main currency. And with these tariffs and with this lack of confidence from international organizations with the U.S., it is certainly giving BRICS, or maybe I guess other organizations, and they're planning the new development bank as a challenger for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
I know, exactly. I mean, the commodities markets are at a massive flux. Everybody keeps saying, we're talking about the stock market and companies like Apple and one of these Amazon, these giant companies. But is anybody looking at the price of corn and the price of soybeans? I mean, that's flying all over the place now, and I think it's because. We tried this before, back in, it was in 2018, where Trump tried this tariff thing on China. And what did it do? And so all of a sudden China goes, all right, well, we won't buy your soybeans. And we won't sell you any of this. And so the farmer's like, what are we going to do with all these soybeans? And so the United States had to do subsidies to all the farmers because the tariff thing. And then, all right, then we came down a little bit and everybody's fine. Now we're back again. We're back in the same thing. And China's like, listen, we just won't buy your stuff. And I know that the farmers right now are looking at the commodities market and going, oh my God, look at the price of corn. Or look at the price of this, look at the price of, the things, wheat, the stuff that they grow in the United States. And they're like, what are we going to do? And if this runs the farmers out of the business, then the United States will desperately have to rely on other countries for food supplements because the farmers just can't stay afloat. And I saw tons of interviews with farmers, and they're like, we're scared to death that the Asian countries are not going to buy our stuff, that the Russians are not going to buy our stuff anymore. The Europeans, they're going to start buying, we're not, the United States is not the only place that makes corn. They're not the only place that grows wheat, soybeans, things like that. There's other places in the world that have this. And I think that these trade deals that the United States has had with the rest of the world, I mean, it took decades to put these together. I mean, it's taken 40, 50 years to put all this together. And then all of a sudden in 1 week, it's all just, chopped to shreds. I think this is where the world economy is going to make a huge shakeup now. And that's what I'm worried about mostly is the power of the dollar is going to begin to weaken starting in the next month.
Right. So, like I said, this is really an opportunity for, the BRICS and whatever organizations out there who's really chancing on or hoping for the decline of the dollar, which is a lot of economists today and analysts would say, oh, that's very impossible. But there's economists who would argue that the journey for 1,000 steps begins with one step. So this may be one of those steps.
And the Chinese are like, RMB is a lot cheaper than the dollar right now. You might be able to get and I'm thinking about this now. And just me personally is that the Philippine peso might not be a bad thing to buy right now.
Exactly.
For anybody out there that is thinking about what to do. Because I don't see how the U.S. dollar, if you judge it against the peso, I don't see how it's going to hold at 57, 58 for too much longer in the way things are going. Now, I know that the United States, I'm sure the Philippines is going to start to ask for exemptions. I can't believe that they wouldn't, because the Philippines has a great relationship with the United States, and I'm sure they're going to ask for, some kinds of exemptions from all these kind of things. And I would hope that the United States would, help the Philippines out in this thing, because we are friends, and the United States needs the Philippines for a lot of reasons. So that's what I'm hoping. I know that they're in the, I saw it in the newspaper that they're, talking about what possible exemptions the Philippines could get. But that is one of the things that has crossed my mind a little bit, as it might not be such a bad time to invest in Philippine pesos.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And going back to fostering good relationships with the Trump administration, I think you remember U.S. Defense Secretary recently visited
yes, he did. Yeah.
And he had a lot of good things to say about the Philippines.
He did.
Surprisingly, or whoever his media coach was. But I think that's also, if that's a teller or like a signifier of what the Philippines would look like with Trump administration, I think that it's going to be, looking at that event, I think I'm quite optimistic, to be honest with you. I think Philippines can really hone in and really, grab the opportunity to really improve or force a relationship. I know it's very militaristic right now, military focused for a lot of reasons, but I think if they start off of that aspect of it, I think it could lead on to other things, because it looks like Trump is being very friendly with a Marcos Jr. administration.
I know, it's one of those things like, as they say, don't say anything to make him mad. Always compliment his hair. It always helps. And speaking of his hair, I don't know how this correlates to that, but this is about the end of the show. We have had such a great time here with Attorney Vaughn on the show. We thank him so much for coming by. I hope he comes back again very soon. When are you heading back to the United States?
I think I will be going back this summer. If not, I usually go in the holidays right around November. Celebrate Thanksgiving, Christmas with my family. Sometimes I try to skip the Philippine typhoon season. I don't want to deal with it. But normally when I go back to the States, I go to Hawaii and Wisconsin on their good weather. So it would be nice to see how everything is going with whatever they have going on.
We will keep in touch with you through all that time. Hopefully we can hook you again to come be on the show.
I would love to. It's such a great time, Eric. Thank you for having me.
And us too. So for me, Eric Lecain, and Attorney Vaughn here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and Radio Bandito TV. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and hopefully we'll be back again next week if we don't get taken down by the tariffs. So everybody, please be safe out there, and we will see you again next week.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.